I'm Simon O'Brien and this is Liverpool's Central Library, a place where as a child I fell in love with reading. Over the next half hour I'll be uncovering some of the stories behind some of my favourite children's books and finding out how the Northwest landscape inspired some of our best loved authors. Tonight I'll be crossing lakes to discover the enduring appeal of swallows and amazons. I'll be venturing underground in search of the weird stone of Brisingamen and meeting our favourite writers to discover how even the mundane can inspire young minds. So come with me as I delve into the books that made Britain. Where better to start my journey than here in the Lake District, home to one of our best loved children's writers, Beatrix Potter. She found fame when she wrote this, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, the story of a very naughty rabbit in a blue jacket who defies his mother and sneaks into Mr. McGregor's garden to steal radishes. It has sold more than 45 million copies worldwide and is still loved by adults and children today. London-born Beatrix fell in love with the Lake District on a series of family holidays at Lingholm on the shores of Derwentwater. It was here she indulged her love for painting and drawing. This is the room up in the eaves of the house that Beatrix used as a studio and where she painted, amongst other things, a pet rabbit as he lay by the fire. Beatrix's pets featured heavily in her stories, and none more so than a rabbit called Peter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields and down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden." Originally self-published, The Tale of Peter Rabbit sold 50,000 copies in its first 2 years, and with the proceeds, Beatrix Potter bought Hilltop, a working farm in the Lake District, and now a magnet to fans from all over the world.
There you go, perfect, thank you very much. All right.
This is the complete antithesis to life in London.
Absolutely. Beatrix hated the formality, the dirtiness, the griminess of life in London and the social circles that she was obliged to mix in. So this really was her bolt hole, this was her escape.
Where did it start?
Well, the story of Peter Rabbit actually started as a letter to a small boy called Noel who wasn't very well. The weather wasn't so good and Beatrix didn't know what to write, so she said, "I'll tell you a story about 4 little rabbits." And the names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail and Peter.
And is this...
And here we've got a copy of the original letter that Beatrix sent to Noel in 1893.
May I?
Of course, yeah.
That's just amazing. There they are. Obviously Cottontail and Peter. And what strikes you immediately is how little the illustrations actually changed.
Yes, absolutely. Some of them changed very little, and then they make it into the final cut.
I personally went out of my way to come to Hilltop one time I was in the Lake District just to buy a copy of Peter Rabbit to read to my daughter because I knew she'd love it because there's real jeopardy.
There is, and there's danger in the stories. Beatrix doesn't shy away from what happens in the natural world, and that an animal's life is hard and there are threats, but there's always a happy ending.
the garden is as much an inspiration in all of her stories as the house, if not more so.
It is. There's several of her stories feature the garden in the illustrations, most notably Tom Kitten. Some lovely pictures of Tom Kitten and his sisters playing on the flagged path. Jemima Puddle Duck, we have Jemima Puddle Duck's rhubarb patch. And Tom Kitten's gate down at the bottom of the garden where he sat on the wall and watched the puddle ducks walk past in the road. So yeah, there's a lot of things in the garden which are still applicable.
There's this connection running through Beatrix Potter's life and through her stories, and it's nature, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. She was a massive fan of nature, as it were. Yeah. She, even from a young age, she would draw animals and fungi and all sorts. She was a very accomplished artist in that respect.
Am I right in thinking that she also used to kind of dissect rabbits and things to see what the anatomy was like?
Yeah, apparently so. She had a couple of bats, apparently, that she looked after for a while, and when she moved away, she had to get rid of the bats. She let one go, but she killed the other one, and just to kind of study it.
Is Beatrix as popular as ever, or come on, you've been watching people come and go.
She seems to be more popular. I mean, our visitor numbers are going up fairly steadily year on year. Back in the mid-80s when I started, we had probably 50 or 60,000 a year, and we're now up to maybe 80, 90,000. So the appeal doesn't seem to be diminishing.
On her death, Beatrix Potter bequeathed her portfolio of 15 farms, numerous cottages and over 4,000 acres of land to the National Trust, ensuring that the Lake District could be enjoyed by future generations. The Lakes was also the inspiration for another great British book, Swallows and Amazons. Childhood visits to Coniston led to a lifelong love of this landscape for Arthur Ransom, who learned to sail here with the children of a family friend. It left such an impression that he said of the book, "I couldn't help but write it. It almost wrote itself."
They're pirates! Let's chase them. Let's. Come on then.
The well-loved story of two groups of children and their sailing adventures on what's believed to be Coniston water still draws visitors to the lake. It's such a fabulous book. It stood the test of time. That people still come to the lakes just because of Swallows and Amazons?
Absolutely, they certainly do. The scenery has brought them here, the story, the locations that they know from the stories, and they can come and see things like, the island that we're going to be seeing very, very shortly.
Yeah, I'm quite excited, you know.
So am I, even after many, many times. Yeah, it's a wonderful place, and the lake itself it's almost a character in its own right. The scenery is so important.
It just is, isn't it? You can see why Arthur Ransom was just inspired by this.
Very much so, and even from an early age when his family brought him here, not kicking and screaming, he just loved it here from a very, very early age, and that went through his whole life.
So on my map then, that's Wildcat Island.
It is indeed, and there it is on the map. And it's a magical place. It's the only true island on Coniston, and it does attract youngsters. And on a better day than this, we might actually see some people on it. But there's the secret harbour, and it is indeed a secret today.
Well, even on a day like today, honestly, it's a magic place. It really is.
It is. And that's the word, I think, magic. It's the magic of the stories, the magic of the locations that inspired Ransom to write the stories and bring people here.
Yeah.
It's a magnet.
You know, you mentioned that the lakes themselves are filmic. They are a character in themselves, and of course, the whole story has been revisited. The film's been remade.
Indeed, it has, and very successfully. It's a very, very good film.
A story worth retelling many times.
All aboard!
You might as well take this, although I know how much you all hate cake.
Big cheer for Mrs. Jackson. Hip, hip, hooray! Here's to Swallow and all who sail in her. Hi! Hi! Remember, keep your eye on the flag and you won't miss a jibe.
I want that boat
all back in one piece, or Mr. Jackson will have your guts for garters. And no sailing at night. That's one of the deepest lakes in the whole of England.
They'll be back before tea.
A small collection of Ransom's belongings are held at the Lakeland Museum in Kendal. What kind of man was Arthur Ransom?
He was many things. In his biography, he wrote that he'd lived snatches from a dozen different lives. He was a Bohemian when he was young, in the sort of Bohemian set in London before the war. He was a romantic. He became a political journalist, a war correspondent, and he became a children's author. Yeah, so,
a very complex
and he was,
character.
yeah, and he was also a secret agent for MI6 at one stage.
No, he wasn't.
He was, yeah. After the Russian Revolution, so in the period of the war and after the Russian revolutions, he became involved in a degree of sort of secret work, if you like, because he was one of the few Englishmen who had any kind of connection with the Bolshevik leadership through his journalism.
I mean, you say we've got two artefacts here. Maybe you have just a look at them. I know
yes, indeed. We've got here under the green cover, we've got the manuscript for Swords and Amazons.
This is working draft.
Yes, this will be one of the drafts that he worked on.
So the first thing that strikes you...
Well, we have the names of the children in the book.
But what immediately grabs me is that he changed them.
Yes, he changed some of them. I mean, originally the Amazons, who we know as Nancy and Peggy, were going to be called Jane and Mary, which is perhaps not quite so dramatic. So he'd obviously had second thoughts there.
Some of it's recognisable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I mean, anyone who's read the book or seen the films will remember the telegram that their absent father sends them at the start of the book.
Yeah, come on, Graham, give us it.
Better drowned than duffers, if not duffers won't drown. They had some discussion about what does this mean, and it basically means that if you're not an idiot, then you won't drown. But if you are an idiot, then their father thinks better off drowned.
What else have we got here?
Well, we have a selection in the museum here of fan mail that was sent to Arthur Ransom. He was very keen to reply to fan mail when he could, but he used to get loads of cards, hand-drawn cards.
A happy Christmas to the captain
cards.
of the pirates.
We have one here which somebody has obviously read his book and thought about the houseboat in the book, and they've drawn him a picture of a house on a boat with a stone chimney and sort of pitched roof. And all manner of good things. So,
well, because if you were living in a city or a town, then you've never seen a houseboat. What is a houseboat?
Yes, yeah, I think exactly that. A lot of his fans in the 30s were from inner cities, children who never actually came to the Lake District, but were able to escape here in their imaginations.
Yeah. And there it is interpreted. Yeah. Just brilliant. And obviously you can see how fond these children are of the author. This is so personalised.
Yes. And I think this, for a lot of people, this carries on through their lives. I mean, it's a formative influence.
Yeah. Obviously, in your own case, for example.
Well, yes, in my own case.
That one.
And almost 50 years after his death, Ransom's books continue to inspire children to sail and seek adventure.
With the wind from the northwest, they had to beat against it to go up the lake to Holly-Ho. The little swallow rushed from one side of the lake to the other and back again, going about at the end of each tack with a shiver and a flap of her brown sail, lying down to it as the sail filled up and then picking herself up again as she gathered her speed again and rushed once more across the slapping waves.
I like the book because it's set in a real place on a real lake with real islands, and it just makes it so real and imaginative.
I thought it really captures your imagination. It really feels like you are one of the swallows, and I just think it's really fun to read.
From the drama of the lakes to the majesty of the Cheshire Plains, I've brought you here to share with you the favourite book of my childhood, a book which has its roots beneath my very feet here at Alderley Edge. Alan Garner's Weirdstone of Brittingham utterly gripped me when I was 10 years old and transported me to a different world, an underground kingdom full of sleeping knights and magical wizards, and I cannot wait to go back there. So let's go exploring. There you are. Hiya, fellas. How are you? I'm going in the footsteps of the book's characters Colin and Susan as they are led down into the dark mines beneath Alderley Edge.
Right.
Let's go to another world.
There we go then.
Magic.
Cadelin led the children out of the cave and down a long winding tunnel into the very heart of the hill. And as they went, the air grew colder and the strange light fiercer, turning from blue to white until at last they came into a long, low cavern. An echoing sigh like waves, slowly rippling on a summer shore, rose and fell upon the air, and before the children's eyes were the sleeping knights in their silver armour, each beside his milk-white mare, just as Galtha had described them in the legend, their gentle breathing filling the cave with its sweet sound. And all around and over the motionless figures, the cold white flames played silently.
Such a magical place.
It is. You've got the sounds of the water dripping. The atmosphere is very enchanting to begin with, and occasionally we get mists that come. That's formed purely by atmospheric pressure, and it gives a very eerie, spooky effect.
How old are these mines?
The oldest confirmed workings we have is 2500 BC.
Wow. So that is special in itself, isn't it?
It really is special.
Amazing. And what were they after?
They were after copper, and over here we have a really good example. This is malachite, which is the green, and the navy blue is azurite.
Yeah.
This is what we call a secondary depositation. It's water dripping from the ceiling that contains copper, and as it dries out, it leaves a staining on the rock.
The colours are amazing, aren't they?
The colours are absolutely amazing.
And this, I'm guessing, in my imagination, there should be some sleeping knights in here.
Well, yes, the legend has it that a farmer was coming across the back of Alderley Edge track with a white mare, and he was met by a wizard on the path, and the wizard asked him could he purchase the horse, and he said no, I'm taking it to market at Macclesfield. He didn't sell it at the fair, but on the way back the wizard met him again, and he said, will you now sell me the horse? So he duly said, yes, I will sell you the horse. The wizard took him over to the rocks, tapped on the side of the rock with his stick. The rock opens, and inside were the knights all sat there on horses, apart from one, he had no horse. And they're supposed to come and help when England's in strife. The farmer took his money, left the mine, and then he could no longer see the entrance.
So that legend existed, and Alan Garner then drew inspiration from the legend,
absolutely,
coupled it with the mines,
yes,
and created this amazing story, which years later completely captivated me. It's just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Very, very special. Now this really is a dream come true for me, because Alan has granted us a rare interview here at his home in Cheshire. And just look at it. It even looks like somewhere a wizard would live.
It's a young man's book. It does have the energy of everything that was building up in me until I began it at the age of 21. And its landscape, its place, its atmosphere, there's a huge energy in it.
But it has everything as well, doesn't it? You know, because you've got the majesty of the Cheshire Plains, and then you know the woodland, where you get, and then you're into the belly of the earth, basically.
When I was a child, I was either ill or I was on the edge, and it was wartime, and it was a case of playing there at all seasons, day or night. Nobody bothered. I came from a rural working class craft family, and the attitude was, well, if there was anything wrong, we'd hear soon enough. So there was no ban on going onto the edge. And it somehow, I suppose it took me over. And so when it did come to the point of writing, I thought, this place is real. And if I'm going to do it, I've got to follow what the land tells me, because you may not believe what I say is happening there, but you can take the Ordnance Survey map and it's a 12-figure grid reference and it's accurate.
And I really think that's what was magic about it. I know that that's what gripped me when I was younger. There's no question. The fact that the landscape you were painting was real. It's outside your window here. But things that were happening within that landscape were otherworldly. And that combination was fantastic. And really, really worked.
I don't make things up. I find them.
Clambering over Alderley Edge, Alan found the perfect weapon for the book's mythical creatures.
Here is a genuine Svart hammer. These are what the Svarts used to kill people with.
That's amazing. Eh?
And what it is, in reality, it's a maul for crushing copper ore. And it's a glacial pebble that's had the groove put around it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have withy round it like that, and it was swung underhand, rather like a croquet. And it's for crushing ore, and it's 4,000 years old. It's early Bronze Age.
Alan, that's amazing. So there is fact meeting fiction.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, as this was the book that inspired me as a child, my daughter is now just of that age when she's fallen in love with reading. So I'd be honoured if you could sign this to Rosa, please.
To Rosa.
Thank you so much.
I think that's that.
So far, I've crossed beautiful lakes and delved deep into the bowels of the earth, seeking the inspiration of our best loved writers. Well, now I'm off somewhere rather different. Widnes, for our final book, Millions by Frank Cottrell Boyce.
Start with the money. That's what our Anthony says. That's what people want to know about. Like if you're moving house. You don't say, we're moving house and the new one's got a green door. You say how much you're paying, how much you got for the old one. Mortgage, interest rates, stamp duty, solicitor's fees, how much you'll get if the new one goes up in value.
That's called equity.
Personally, I think so what? Money's just a thing, and things change. 1 minute something's there and you can cuddle up to it. The next minute it's gone, like a Malteser.
The book is set on an ordinary modern housing estate and tells the tale of a young lad called Damien who is obsessed with saints. So when he finds a huge stash of cash, he believes it's been sent by God and decides to use it for good causes. But his brother Anthony and a gang of robbers have other ideas.
Tommy Lee, where do you want to go? Wherever there's trouble, said Tommy Lee. Seems to be quite a lot of trouble already. The cars were flashing their headlights and beeping their horns. I managed to...
It earned its author the Carnegie Medal for Best Children's Book. Frank Cottrell Boyce has not only written scores of books and screenplays, but was also the brains behind the spectacular opening ceremony for the 2012 Olympic Games.
Moving House by Anthony Cunningham, Year 6. We've just moved house to number 7 Cromarty Close, a 3-bedroom property not overlooked at the front. It cost £180,000, but will retain its value well and even go up. It has solar panels on the roof and a cost-efficient central heating system throughout. It's got 2 bathrooms, including an ensuite to the master bedroom. Substantial gardens front and rear complete the picture in an exclusive new development in a semi-rural setting. I've got my own bedroom. It's got footballer wallpaper, which I chose. I remember Cromarty Close when it was made of string. Dad took us to a big field near the railway, all overgrown with brambles and nettles. A man with a check shirt and a clipboard led us to a place where the brambles had been cleared and the grass cut short. It was crisscrossed with avenues of string. He pointed down one and said, Dogger. Then he walked to the next one and said, Finisterre. And then he pointed to ours and said, Cromarty. What do you think? Said Dad. Do you want to move here? I said, yes, please, very enthusiastically.
Frank, I'll be blunt. You know, I've been to very, very beautiful landscapes where it's obvious what the inspiration for a book was.
Yeah.
But excuse me, a housing estate?
Yeah, because to me, well, Millions is about a family that's sort of starting again. And to me, these places always speak of optimism. In fact, in the stage directions for the script, it said, this house looks like it's built of solid optimism. Because when I was very little, I lived with my gran in a flat in the middle of Liverpool, and everywhere around had been bomb damage and lots of people were being rehoused. And when it was our turn to be rehoused, we moved out to an estate very, very, very like this one. And I just thought it was the most magical, enchanted place. You know, it was a place where people were beginning again, and we had a garden, and it was a tiny garden. I now know it was a tiny garden, but to me it looked like the Serengeti. Do you know what I mean? I thought there might be antelope down at the bottom of it. And they've always seemed to me a really exciting place, because I associate it with this amazing moment in my life when everything seemed to be opening up and everything was starting all over again. And I kind of didn't realise when I was writing Millions that I was writing about my own childhood. Till I saw some dailies from the film, and there was a shot of a kid carrying in these cardboard boxes. I remember so well that we kept these cardboard boxes in the garden for ages. And, you know, and everyone was starting over. Everybody was young, the place was full of children, the place was full of bikes, you could climb over each other's fences, play with each other. It was like a mini park, you know. And I now realise that we were living through a utopian experiment, you know, and I've never lost my love for these places, and I've always thought they were a great place to be when you were a kid. I worked on the Olympic opening ceremony, and we had our Barratt home in the middle of it, because that is where most people in this country live. And we were under a lot of pressure from people higher up that this looked pathetic. It just made me really angry, because those houses are where people dream dreams. You know, they are the factory where we produce our great soft power and everything, you know.
Your characters, you know, you really bring these places to life. And I think it is the fact that people can touch the places, you know, to put it in these semi-urban modern estates.
Yeah.
A young reader can immediately associate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where I grew up, and that's where I can imagine people growing up. And they're that strange thing of like they're like villages. They're safe. You know, you tend to know your neighbours and stuff like that. And okay, when you get older, you might find them a bit boring, but you had a license to roam in them. You know, to climb and to explore and to do things that you shouldn't be doing and all that stuff. And that's where your imagination is born, isn't it?
I was very excited indeed about going to see Alan Garner, because I read The Weird Stone of Brisingamen when I was young, and I was just spellbound by it.
Absolutely.
And so I was very excited. And so there's that incredibly strong bond you get between a young reader and an author. Do you feel, is there responsibility that comes with that?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, that's sort of why I became a children's writer, that you realise that you're working with live ammunition. You know, The Weird Stone of Brisingamen completely changed the way I look at things. Right? Even now, if I drive through Cheshire, I think of it as a two-storey county, because you've got such a strong sense of what's underground. It completely affects the way you look, and that just seems to me a game worth playing, you know. And so it makes you, I think the great gift of children's literature is that it makes you aware of little pleasures in life and the little beauties in life. And as you get older and life gets tougher, it's those small pleasures and those small beauties that will get you through those tough days, I think.
My travels around the Northwest have given me a real sense of how the landscape can be the inspiration behind some truly great stories. I firmly believe that the love of reading is the greatest gift you can give to a child. And if they don't fancy going to the library, then why not bring the library to them? Like a giant book carelessly dropped by a giant in a field, I'm nearing completion of this school library here in my daughter Rosa's school in Woolton. I truly hope that this place will be the inspiration for Rosa and her friends for generations to come. Shall we see how it's getting on?
Yeah.
Come on, be full of books soon. Let's go in. How many do you think we'll get in here? What book has caught your imagination? Share your suggestion using the hashtag #LoveToRead and find out what other books people are talking about.